and welcome back to this download idealistic crusade. This video is actually an overview of the things I picked up in our local store. Where they had a big, well, really a gigantic anniversary sale. It's our local chain, pretty much our major record slash comic store. This is actually their 45th anniversary this year, so they did a big multi-store sale. They're in at least 2 states, so that meant there would be one store at a time where they put the whole store on sale, and then they had a big sidewalk sale where they literally just put out items for free. You can't say items for free and me go there and not get a lot of stuff. Let's just put it that way. So there was a lot of box digging and crate digging involved, and I figured I might find 1 or 2 things, but try to not go too terribly crazy. But what's always interesting whenever they do one of these sales, usually it's a certain amount of things, and it's the stuff that they just have had for years that is never sold. So usually a lot of dollar bin records and dollar CDs, things like that, some old VHS tapes, but other interesting odds and ends that get put out for a quarter or 50 cents. But sometimes they do a free item sale, but this, for their anniversary, they decided to say 10 free items per person per store you went to, and they did it over the course of a month. So I went to 2 different stores, and on top of that, they then said that all movies in store were half off, essentially. So that meant I partook in quite a bit. So I actually managed to find some really interesting titles. I do try to be, even with free stuff, I try to be at least a bit choosy, otherwise I'm going to have stuff everywhere, but I do that anyway, of course. But this time around, I managed to find some really interesting things. A number of these are actually MOD DVD-Rs, so some Warner Archive titles in the wild, even some Sony Choice titles, and even one of the rare MGM MOD discs, in addition to quite a bit of out-of-print materials and a whole bunch of classic serials, which is really exciting for me, because the more I get into serials, the more you discover that the video releases are just all over the place, and a lot of serials have a couple different releases, and they all are problematic, and some you do have to really track down the best official version, and a lot of those are actually quite tricky to find or out of print, and some, even the best version or the only version, is still really crappy. So it's nice to find it in a free sale. So I have a whole stack of DVDs and even some VHS tapes to go over, of a whole lot of interesting stuff. And again, this all came from the local store's big 45th anniversary sale. So this was just so much stuff, and so much in terms of really interesting titles, and just a big assortment of different things, that I figured it would be nice to go over in video form. And then, this is stack 1. Stack 1 of 2. So if that tells you, there's quite a bit to go over. So again, most of these are actually free titles. They actually let you, if you got more than 10, you could get additional items for 45 cents, and the anniversary, it's like, okay, fun pricing. And then a lot of things in the store were actually 45% off. So it was fun for all, but you can't put a giant store and then the whole warehouse section of things from years past on sale, and also for free sale, and let me loose in there, because I'm going to do some damage to my already overflowing shelves. So to start with, in rough chronological order on these DVDs, if there's a Fox title, regardless of format, particularly a lot of these which don't really have Blu-rays, because of the Disney buyout, I've actually started it's really panic buying Fox titles, because Disney just pulled the plug on their availability for the most part. So if it's a Fox title and it even seems remotely interesting and it's inexpensive, I go ahead and grab it. Again, even if it's DVD, because chances are it's not going to see the light of day again anytime soon. So there are quite a number of Fox titles mixed in here. They had a batch of Fox World War II films. So this is 1942's To the Shores of Tripoli, with Maureen O'Hara, Randolph Scott, and John Payne. I've never gotten to see this, but again, it's a nice Fox DVD copy, and it was in the free sale. It even has the original booklet of the first pressing that Fox was doing at this time. This is, of course, in their branded their War Classics series, where They did a lot of the more famous titles, but then they did a lot of obscure titles too, and quite a bit of them have not seen a release after this point on Blu-ray. The same goes for 1944's A Wing and a Prayer with Donna Mesh and Dana Andrews. Same design, same label printing and everything, and also has the nice booklet as well. Again, I admit I started panic buying Fox titles anytime I find a cheap Fox title. I'm like, you know what? I'm not gonna find it again at this price, particularly not for free. So it was really cool to find things that weren't just junk DVDs in the free section. Next is 1950s Fancy Pants, a Paramount DVD of the Bob Hope, Lucille Ball pairing. And as far as I know, this is actually out of print. And I think this was, well, actually, they started including a lot of things. And this is one of those times where the store actually noted that it is out of print. So I couldn't believe that this was tossed away in there. They really were trying to clear out a lot of stuff. And they started putting in boxes of their actual DVD store section of things to get rid of, or just trying to clear shelf space. So there were really legitimate titles in there, like this one, which I was just shocked to see in there. Somebody must have been a big World War II film fan, because there were a lot of World War II themed films mixed in. This is 1952's Flat Top, which is on an Artisan DVD. I've never gotten to see this film, but it's got Sterling Hayden and Richard Carlson, and it's a more uncommon film. You don't see Artisan classic titles popping up very often unless they're the biggest, most notable titles. But this is actually got a nice booklet too, so I was happy to find this in the free sale. Here's another Paramount DVD of a film I've wanted to see for a while. It's been on my radar. This is 1953's Arrowhead, a Charlton Heston starring Western based on the W.R. Burnett novel. Pretty nice, colorful artwork, and again, rather uncommon, so surprised to see this in there as well. So like I said, they were just putting in all kinds of boxes from the actual store as well, so they used this as sort of a means to also clear out a lot of back stock and things. So it wasn't just the usual junky DVDs and things, and we'll get to a few of those I splurged on towards the end of this video, because I will admit that I did pick up some public domain cheapy DVDs simply because they were free and it's the only release that exists, and I feel dirty now that I have a couple of these because the quality is so bad. But again, they were free. I don't feel too terrible about it. Continuing on with World War II themes again, this is 1969's Submarine X-1, which is a pretty early starring vehicle for James Caan. Again, I've only read about this or heard about it, but never got to see it, so seemed like a nice way to finally try it out. It's a pretty spiffy looking MGM DVD. It's just bare bones, but they did come up with the sort of, I guess, stylized 2000s art they were doing for a lot of 60s and 70s more obscure thrillers like this on DVD at the time. But it's a nice package, and as far as I know, this is still the primary release available of this film. This one I've heard of. I've never gotten to see it, and I, of course, know the title, but I picked up the MGM DVD of Romeo is Bleeding from 1994 with Gary Oldman and the always wonderful Roy Scheider. This has got the fun distinction of being from the MGM avant-garde cinema series, so they did a number of series brandings on DVDs where it was just literally an MGM disc, but I always find it funny when I find one I've forgotten about, like the MGM Avant-Garde Cinema line. It's in the typical MGM design, so it looks pretty fancy, even though it's just got a trailer, but it is anamorphic, which helps, and it does have one of those little page booklet inserts, which is always nice. So there were a lot of classics mixed in here, which blew my mind, because usually, as I said, these store sales are mostly junk DVDs or 90s and 2000s common titles or things nobody wants. And it's kind of funny saying how many copies you'll see of the same movie or title pop up in about 10 different boxes. You'll see quite a number of the same old favorites appear all the time. But it was really surprising to find some things that I've been meaning to get for some time. So to go through the more notable DVDs real quick, this was a surprise because this is one of the Frank Capra titles that's more obscure, and it only had a decent Laserdisc and then this DVD port. So this is 1950's Riding High, which is actually a remake of the Capra Robert Riskin 1934 Broadway Bill. This was one of a number of films that Capra actually remade, probably the most notable being Pocketful of Miracles. His last picture was a remake of Lady for a Day, another Capra Riskin film. These don't have the greatest reputation in the world, and they definitely don't really hold a candle to their original counterparts. I like things in Pocketful of Miracles, but this one's a bit more of a harder sell because it is a bit, it's definitely flatter compared to Broadway Bill itself, which is obviously a 1930s film with tons of energy, and it's got Myrna Loy, so automatically, it's like it's obvious which picture is going to win. And the original was written by Robert Riskin, whereas this is remaking that, and it just doesn't have the same energy to it. But it has been a while since I've seen it, and I have wanted to get the DVD because, again, all you got for later Capra titles, pretty much like this one, is a Laserdisc and a DVD. And this is not a common disc; it's just a standard Paramount release, but they don't put it out all that often. So usually, it's a disc you got to pay usually $10 or $15 for. So I was really happy to find it in the sale. Next is a disc I've wanted to get for a while. I've owned a couple different releases, and this is a title I really hope Warner Archive brings to Blu-ray. It's really one of the last great Errol Flynn catalog titles in his career. It's towards the very end of his time at Warner Brothers, and it's probably the last swashbuckler that he did that could be said to have true greatness in it, and I think it's a lot better than what its reputation is, which is 1953's The Master of Ballantrae, based on the Robert Louis Stevenson story, directed by the great and forever underrated William Keighley, who got some of Flynn's best performances on screen. He was the first director of Adventures of Robin Hood and directed what I think is Flynn's best Western, which is Rocky Mountain, which he did around this time period as well. This film doesn't have the greatest reputation in the world, but it's a heck of a lot of fun, and it was shot by Jack Cardiff in beautiful Technicolor. So this is still the best release there is, and it's the original snapper case, which has the nicer art, and of course, being a snapper case, has interior artwork. So when you get this now, it's usually just a snapper case or an archive MOD reprint. But this film did get VHS and Laserdisc, but they weren't ever very fancy. Then we got this edition, and it does have at least a handful of extras. But this is one title I keep hoping Warner Archive does on Blu-ray, because a new scan of this could be absolutely beautiful. But if you're a Flynn fan and you've never seen this, or you love swashbucklers, this will be right up your alley. And it's not the best picture in the world. It's sort of like a B picture trying to aspire to an A picture in a lot of ways in terms of the scale of it, but the direction and the color photography is really sumptuous and really wonderful, and I think it sort of helps pull a better performance out of Flynn, who was already at this point sort of not really in Warner's good graces, let's put it that way. This is very much at the tail end of his contract. And I do think it is one of his best late period career performances. And it's a really underrated film, so I'm happy to finally have the nice snapper case until we hopefully get a Blu-ray at some point in the future, I hope. So if I'm in a sale and I see MOD titles, then I'm instantly like, oh, what is this? So they had this is the 1949 Douglas Sirk comedy, Slightly French. This is in the Sony Choice line, so this is an MOD title. Sony at least did a good amount of titles, nowhere near as much as Warner Archive, but you really never see MOD titles from the other studios pop up in used shops, especially not in sales like this. So, it's a Sony title. Directed by Douglas Sirk from their MOD line, so of course I'm getting it, even if it's a film I've only maybe read reference to in the Sirk's credits. So I just couldn't believe there were MOD discs in this sale. Speaking of Warner Archive, they had the 1950 William Wellman directed The Happy Years. This is much more, I guess, of a sort of family coming-of-age comedy set in a different time period, so it's also a bit of a costume picture. It's not necessarily my sort of genre, but it's a Warner Archive disc, it's an MOD title, and it's William Wellman, so of course I'm all over this, even though it's just a standard featureless Warner Archive title in their typical sort of design. They also had the Warner Archive release of 1937's Thoroughbreds Don't Cry, which is actually the first credited feature pairing of Mickey Rooney with Judy Garland. So this is essential for MGM fans and fans of both actors, and a nice key piece of their filmography, but of course it's in the archive line, so this was another nice surprise. They also had 1954's Three for the Show, which is again in the Sony Choice line. I've almost gotten this on Laserdisc before, so it'll be cool to check out the DVD. Again, I was just stunned that there were so many MOD discs in really nice shape, just in boxes sitting there as if they had my name on it. And they had this copy of 1958's Hong Kong Confidential, which is a MGM MOD disc in their limited edition collection. They didn't even bother with much of a name. So you rarely see other labels, but you especially don't often see MGM MOD titles. This is actually still sealed, so I couldn't believe this was in there. I've never seen this film, but again, an MOD title for free and it's still sealed. Of course. Unfortunately, it does say it's a full frame transfer, so I guess this is some old 4x3 open matted transfer from who knows when in terms of the master itself, but still, you don't find sealed MOD DVDs for free all the time. Now, this one has a little bit of wear, but I've always wanted to get it because the packaging is nice and it has quite a number of exclusive extras to it that are not on the Blu-ray release. And so I found the limited DVD edition of Master and Commander. It says the really wonderful art on this lovely slip box. It's got a little bit of wear, but it's still intact and the discs are fine. So I don't mind when things are free. So I've wanted to get this for some time. So you have the slip box, and this has a wonderful, nice textured feel. It's from the heyday of DVDs, so the packaging is really first rate, and Blu-ray does not even begin to try and approach something like this. It's a full-on digipack affair. The whole thing has a textured feel to make it sort of have the appearance of parchment or, the actual map on the ship itself. There's a full booklet inside, and then you open like so, and you have the two discs. Disc 1 is the same as the standard DVD and what you have on the Blu-ray, but Disc 2 has quite a number of exclusive extras. You do have a booklet for the actual film, including the chapter stops and all the bonus features, which include the 100 Days Making of documentary made for the DVD, the adaptation of the original novel book itself and called In the Wake of O'Brien, then featurettes on the special effects and the sound design, including deleted scenes, and then multi-angle battle scene studies, various galleries, trailers, technical drawings, all kinds of goodies that you don't get on the Blu-ray release. The sound is very important in terms of having a featurette, because this film is notable for having one of the greatest 5.1 mixes ever done. It has some of the most incredible low bass frequencies in the LFE channel. It has bass frequencies so low that most subwoofers can't get down that low. And actually on the Blu-ray, even though the audio is lossless, some of that has been filtered out. So this is one of those titles where technically the DVD actually has better audio because it hasn't been messed with. There have been some people who have said that there are some foreign editions on Blu-ray that don't have the LFE messed with, but if you really love this film and you have a home theater system, you need a copy on DVD, even though it's pretty common, but you really should track down a copy of this limited presentation because it is very cheap. It does take some time to find one that isn't beaten up, but all of the extras are on here, and the packaging is first rate. So I'm glad I finally picked up one of these. If that wasn't enough, there's a full printed poster as well on the back that has the map of the film's story. They don't do packaging like this anymore. So this is one of these really cool limited sets that's actually very important for a number of reasons, that if you're patient, you can find a copy for very cheap and in your local store, or like I did, finally finding one in the big store sale. Now these last two on this stack, I did actually buy in the store, so these were not in the free sale. So again, everything I just went over was amazingly free, which still boggles my mind. So it always pays to go to your local store when they have one of these big, amazing sales where they're just trying to get rid of all kinds of old warehouse stock and back stock and old boxes. This one is one of those that you need for a technical reason, not just because it's an older Criterion edition. If you want to, collect every Criterion edition there is, this is a title I always wanted to get when I was growing up. Eventually, I put my first Criterion edition was the special edition reissue, but I did finally get the original DVD Criterion put out of The Third Man in 1999. I do still really love the art, as simple as it is. It's very stylish. This is the original single disc Amaray edition with all the nice bonus features, the label, and the interior booklet. But the reason why I wanted to get this and why it's important, the mono track on here, even though it's lossy Dolby Digital on DVD, as far as myself and a lot of other fans are aware, and you can also read this on the, as always, excellent Blu-ray blog, which I will link to in the description, this DVD's audio track, as far as anybody knows, is the best sounding version of the film available. It is by far and away better sonically than any other release, including the Criterion editions, and especially over the horrible track that's on the restoration that's only available on the European Blu-rays, the Studio Canal British Blu-rays, what I have. While that's a new restoration, the audio is terrible. It's filled with all kinds of errors and noise reduction and just is not pleasant at all. So if you want The Third Man in its best sounding edition, and you should because it's one of the greatest works of art ever made, this is actually what you have to get. You have to go back to the original Criterion DVD. And since I'd never owned a physical copy of this, I decided to keep an eye out for it. And lo and behold, it was in the store and it was half off. So this was only $4. So yes, you can never have enough copies of The Third Man. I've owned way too many over my life, but this one you do have to have because the audio is the best that is known to exist, unfortunately. Now, this one I admit I splurged on because I spent $10. They had the original Tarzan collection, which is all of the original MGM, Johnny Weissmuller, and Marino Sullivan Tarzan films, all 6 of them. This is the original set from about 2004 that Warner did. I have the films on Laserdisc, but this guy has been out of print for years. They did do a volume 2, which I have, which is all the RKO films, but unfortunately that's the set that suffers from DVD disc rot, and that's the one I'm still trying to get the rotted disc that's in there replaced, and they've never reissued that, and there are no standalones, unfortunately. This set, they did eventually reissue 4 of the films in one of those TCM 4 Film Favorites classic DVD sets, so you can get some of them as a standalone, but you also are going to miss out on the nice little bonus documentary disc that's included here. This is a lovely slip box from Warner in the mid-2000s, so it's got the nice deluxe slip case. And this has a little bit of wear, but it's otherwise absolutely perfect. So I couldn't believe that, they had it at still a low price, but then it was in the store sale at half off. So when I realized this would only cost me about $10, I was like, are you sure? I'm not going to ask questions. So again, this is the lovely Warner set. It opens like so you get each film with the chapter stops. The only issue with this set is, I think, that I guess due to the run times, they didn't do the films on disc in chronological order, so you do kind of have to jump around because the first film is on disc 1, and then the second film is on disc 2. They're all double feature discs, and they all... Hang on, these are hard to do on camera. I don't know why I thought it was a good idea to do a gigantic digipack fold out, but you'll get the idea. But outside of that little hiccup, it was really incredible to find this for so cheap, because this still goes for quite a bit. The documentary included isn't super long. It's kind of unfortunate these films have not gotten a ton of extras. We all keep hoping Warner Archive does them on Blu-ray. I assume they're having to search for elements to scan because these films were reprinted to death. The transfers in here are pretty good, but they do seem to be the same source as the Laserdisc releases. So that's what I've had and rewatched for years, but now I finally have the DVD set to go along with them. And fortunately, this does predate the DVD rot problem, so all of these should be fine. Again, you can get most of the films as standalones, but the documentary is exclusive to the box, and the art is really nice. And it's when Warner was doing these nicer, sort of thick digipacks. And I also like how the sides sort of have the bamboo of the jungle on them. So it's a nice design, and I couldn't believe this was, again, store sales really help. So I didn't mind splurging on this a little bit because I've always wanted to get this to go along with Volume 2. Now I have to hope I can find a cheap enough Volume 2 that doesn't have a rotted disc in it so I can replace mine. But yeah, still can't believe I found Volume 1 finally. Now, remember how I said I felt a little dirty by getting some really cheap public domain type crappy releases simply because they were free? These are the only physical releases of these serials that I'm aware of, and unfortunately, they're all on the Alpha Video label. And just saying Alpha Video for any cinephile or video nerd or fan of physical media should immediately make everyone shudder due to their notoriously poor quality and sourcing masters and prints from who knows where of the most dubious quality, and then making all of their releases, they do make their covers very colorful, but they're all on the in these wonderful cases that you're getting a real cheap piece of junk because they have the incredible stinky cheap plastic to them. But again, these were in the free sale, and they are all film serials that, as far as I know, these are the only physical release outside of maybe perhaps something in the VHS era that is also on the sort of gray market, or just something not from an official studio source, because serials are all over the place in their quality. So some of these I just picked up because of the credits and some of the people involved. Like this one is a 1931 serial, The Galloping Ghost. As far as I know, this is the only physical release there is. The cover looks pretty nice, but being Alpha, I'm sure the quality was going to leave a lot to be desired. I just wish they would have put more into their transfers. But again, the fact that it was free in the sale and it's the only physical release, and now I'm trying to see as many serials as I can. Even if they're bad, I still would like to see them if possible. Sometimes this is just what you have to do. Outside of this, only some of these are on YouTube, and I'm sure it's probably the same source as this Alpha release. A lot of Alpha releases are split into 2 volumes, so they had both volumes of 1941's The Great Alaskan Mystery. Again, as far as I know, I think this is the only real physical release of this serial there is. It's 2 volumes, but it's the same wonderful, terrible Alpha quality. They just make the covers look really colorful. But, if you're going to get these, it is nice to have both volumes to have the complete serial. Again, as far as I know, this is the only real physical release outside of whatever's up on YouTube. Same thing goes for Junior G-Men with the Dead End Kids. This was co-directed by the great Ford Beebe, who's one of the great serial directors of all time, who co-directed some of the Flash Gordon serials. So I knew this would at least have some energy to it. So I figured I might as well, since they had both volumes of the two-disc set, and again, the only physical release that I know of is the Alpha release. Ford Beebe also co-directed Sea Raiders, so here's volume 1 and 2 again with the Dead End Kids featured. Again, nice, colorful, very colorful covers, but the quality's going to leave a lot to be desired. But again, it's the only release I know of for this serial. And you open them up and you get that nice waft of cheapy, terrible, smelly plastic in your face. But whoever had these, definitely took care of them. They actually put the original sticker label in the case. Then you get this lovely mail-in card. Comments and suggestions. Oh boy, you don't want to know my comments and suggestions. Be in all caps in bold red. Stop making crappy transfers and selling them. But yeah, I took the plunge on these because, again, I'm trying to see more serials, and with ones like this, I know I'm not going to find the only physical release again for free, and so I felt better about having alpha video discs because they're so bad. I have spot checked some of these. They are a little bit better than what I thought they might be, but not by much. I've had one alpha disc before of a serial that, again, was the only real release, and it is appallingly bad, like unbelievably bad. So I was, I'm not holding out very much hope these are going to be much better than that. But, again, these are the only releases that I'm aware of that exist. Now, mixed in there were actually two serials from VCI. I wish they had had more of these. VCI doesn't have the best reputation in terms of overall releases, but for serial releases, they're usually pretty solid, and between VCI and Roan for a lot of serials, that's the absolute best you can do, and thank goodness you don't have to go with Alpha for everything. So they had the Universal serial Rustlers of Red Dog. This was directed by Louis Friedlander, who would go on to direct a couple of Universal horrors as well. But it's a nice standard VCI release. It's not super common, so no VCI serial disc really is. So that was nice to find. Has a nice booklet from the time, and it's all on a single disc. So at least the quality will be far beyond what's on the Alpha releases. They also had the release of Holt of the Secret Service with the great Jack Holt. This is a nice looking VCI disc. Simple art on the back, but very, very straightforward. But this is actually a 2-disc affair, and again, from the same collector. So whoever traded these in must have been a big serial nerd as well, and eventually they made their way into the sale. So this was really nice, and again, it's a 2-disc affair to give more breathing room to all the chapters. I also had 2 Roan group discs mixed in, so this is the Roan release of the John Wayne vehicle Angel and the Bad Man. This had a lot of public domain releases and different things, and as far as I know, this Roan disc is actually one of the best, if not maybe the best physical edition that's currently around. Roan was still doing good, solid transfers around this time. This, of course, was after their Laserdisc days, so had this come out, a couple years before 1999, this might have gotten an LD. But again, this was before Roan got bought out and the name sort of changed hands, so they were still making solid discs of films that didn't have a lot of good releases, if any. So again, as far as I know, this is probably one of the best ways to see this film. Which also goes for The Fighting Westerner with Randolph Scott and the wonderful Ann Sheridan. This has been on my watch list for quite some time because I love both of the leads. And again, this is the Roan disc. This is later on once they changed hands, but it's still a solid edition. And again, as far as I know, this is the best edition there is on physical media because this film has sort of fallen into sort of the public domain, no man's land. It has an introduction and a couple little extras, which are basically just the first chapter of a few serials. So, not extras in relation to the film, but, at least they're there and they at least put something on, which is nice. But again, really happy to find this because it's not a common disc, and if you were to try and track this down on eBay, you will have to spend a little bit to get this and then get it shipped to you. So I was amazed to find this tucked away in there. Now, speaking of VCI, I have another VCI title, and this is actually moving over to a different format. This was a total surprise. I mentioned a little while ago that I had an alpha video release of a serial that was very rare and the quality was unbelievably bad. Well, I never thought I would stumble across this. The only other physical release of this serial, which is a pretty decently regarded one, also co-directed by Ford Beebe, it is Don Winslow of the Navy, and the store had the VCI double VHS release still sealed, which I thought was amazing. This was in the store, and because it was on sale and included, I paid all of $1 for this. So I was really surprised. So now I can finally watch this serial and hope that at least the quality is better than the alpha release. It should be. The couple serials I've seen on VHS that are VHS exclusive on the Republic side of things, those have actually been really solid transfers. And since they're official, they're transferred from the best sources from around then. So I'm thinking this should at least hopefully be better than what's on the just appalling alpha DVD. But again, a real surprise to find this. Serials are very rare to find in the wild, especially when you have to go back to tape ones, and especially still sealed copies. So this was really nice. That alpha DVD was so bad I gave up watching it because I could. Oh God, it's unbelievable. So again, this was really nice and makes up for that terrible DVD. But then they also had, and this will be the last thing I'll go over, they also had an out-of-print serial, no real physical releases, but it's actually quite notable simply due to the subject matter. This is from the Nostalgia Merchant. They did a lot of Republic serials in this same sort of package design. They had the Captain America serial with Lionel Atwill in one of his last career roles. This is a serial I've only seen bits and pieces of and seen references to. This is the only major physical release of this serial, and I guess Disney, because they now have Marvel, they want to try and either bury this or do their own version whenever they feel like it. But of course, the serial's under other hands. It's gonna probably take a lot of legal wrangling if they decide they want to try and release it. Now, it is Nostalgia Merchant, so it's not an official like Tape from Republic or even BCI, but this basically predates those tapes coming out, and the Nostalgia Merchant started doing Republic serials, and then Republic themselves took it over, so it should be at least in the same sort of ballpark of quality. What's also nice is they have custom labels on here, so you actually have Cap himself, even though this serial takes extreme liberties with the character, just like the Captain Marvel serial. It's just one I've always wanted to see, and of course I'm a giant Lionel Atwill fan, so I also love the fact that it has nice labels, because without this label, you won't know which tape is which, because that's where they put part 1 and part 2. So basically the whole chapter serial is split up onto 2 tapes. And there's the spine. But yeah, if you ever see one of these, it's a real blast watching a serial on Laserdisc or even on VHS, because I like to, and you really should split up a few chapters at a time, and you can always, come back to where you left off, and it's sort of fun running it on an older format as opposed to a DVD or even the handful that are on Blu-ray, or especially the crappy uploads on YouTube or whatever you're watching them on. But it's really interesting and very rare and uncommon to find serials like this where this is the only physical release there is, and this is a very notable one, and I couldn't believe they had it there. So again, I think somebody must have traded in their old serial collection, and it just kind of got mixed up across the store. Some of it went to the sale. This was in the actual store as well, so I paid $1.50 for it, which again, you don't see this stuff all the time, and I will admit I have looked up serials on eBay, and I do occasionally look and see if there's any of the ones I'm trying to see even on VHS. So when I see this sticking out of a shelf, I'm like, what? So I couldn't believe this was there. Didn't expect to go in and find a whole bunch of classic serials, especially not the Captain America serial. But that's not all. We also have to talk about stack number 3, which I picked up from the other store. And this one was a real surprise, because apparently they had somebody come in who had traded in an entire collection that was filled with quite a number of Warner Archive MOD titles. So these were all absurdly cheap. They had a lot of titles I'd been wanting to get, but simply due to the fact that MOD DVDs are usually pretty pricey, even when they're on sale online, they just went on my wish list, and there's so many archive discs I haven't gotten yet. But they also had a lot of classic spy thrillers and spy-themed adventure stories and materials and thrillers from the 60s and 70s, but also that included a number of interesting made-for-television specials. So I'll start with those. This is one I've read about for a long time, always wanted to see, but they had the DVD of Horror at 37,000 Feet, the very well-loved 1973 made-for-television film. This is much more in the horror realm, but the cast is fantastic, and it's just been on my watch list for ages. This isn't a particularly super expensive DVD, but it doesn't pop up often at all. I've never actually seen one in the wild before, so this was a really nice find. And again, with the store sale, it was absurdly cheap. The other is the adaptation, or the TV miniseries, of The Ryman Exchange, which of course is based on the Robert Ludlum novel. I've never seen this. It doesn't have the greatest reputation, but I was very curious to see how they adapted Ludlum, who is, I think, one of the most difficult authors to adapt in terms of adapting their works to another medium. This is also due to Ludlum's novels being extraordinarily convoluted, very full of descriptions, and also insanely long. I think trying to even think of how to adapt the Bourne trilogy into a film screenplay is just an incredible task, which is why, of course, the Bourne films pretty much ignored the books entirely and went off and did their own thing, much to their detriment. So I've always been curious about this. It is a 4-hour miniseries. Of course, it will have the TV censoring constraints of the time, but I'm just curious to see how they adapted the novel. And this is not a common DVD, so I was like, well, heck, while it's here, I'm not going to find it again for this cheap. The rest of these are Warner Archive titles, and if I see a Warner Archive disc for cheap, it doesn't even matter if I've never seen the film or it's not even in my sort of usual forte. It's Warner Archive. I'm just going to go for it and have a good time. So this is the 1956 Meet Me in Las Vegas, which has a wonderful sort of time capsule feel for Vegas of the time. It's, of course, starring Sid Charisse. It's in CinemaScope and color, but it's also an absolutely star-studded film. And, of course, Peter Lorre even pops up in this. So I was happy to pick up a copy of this. It's one of the Warner Archive titles that's credited as remastered. And, of course, that's always a sort of questionable moniker. I guess they just use that whenever it's a master they spiff up. Sometimes it gets used when they put out a film more than once as an MOD title, when they actually go back and spiff it up for remastering, but sometimes it just seems like some of the covers get that label applied to them. So I never know for sure if what that sort of refers to in a remastering process. But it actually does have some special features, some vintage musical numbers and pieces, so it's a rare archive MOD disc that does have extras. But again, just a real surprise finding all these archive discs. And again, with the store sale, these were all, pretty much $1.50 to $2 or $3 a piece. So of course I was just going to grab all of them. I also had the archive release of 1956's The Rack, which is a early real standout for Paul Newman and is a sort of home front picture talking about returning GIs after the Korean War and the sort of adjustment period, but especially for someone who was a prisoner of war, i.e. the Newman character. It's, of course, based on the Rod Serling teleplay, and I believe Serling himself wrote the script for this, so this has always been on my watch list. I've seen a few clips of it before, but I just haven't got to see the whole thing, and this is the lovely Warner Archive DVD pressing, so again, it was a complete surprise finding this in the store. Continuing with that sort of theme of ex-POWs from the Korean War returning to civilian life, we have 1956's Toward the Unknown, which is a William Holden vehicle directed by Mervyn LeRoy, which also apparently is James Garner's first film appearance, which is very interesting. This has been on my watch list for a very long time. Essentially, this, again, is about Holden's character being an ex-prisoner of war, and he comes back and then essentially gets into aviation and becomes sort of an aviation drama picture. But essentially, he's trying to get his footing again and sort of clear his name, because apparently, as far as I understand it, his character was forced to give up a sort of false confession during torture. But it does seem to be a film that sort of starts one way and then transitions into, it sort of reminds me of the setup of Chain Lightning, the Bogart vehicle from 1950, which was his last Warner Brothers picture. So it seems to be one of those films that, like Chain Lightning, starts as a sort of war film and transitions over into be sort of being sort of an aviation behind-the-scenes drama, so there's a lot of aerial footage sort of spliced in. But again, this has just been on my watch list for a long time, and I'm happy to have the archive DVD. Next is a 1961 noir I've never seen, but I've heard of. This is 20+2 with David Janssen of The Fugitive fame. Again, a lovely Warner Archive DVD release, lovely original poster art. It seems like it'll be an interesting little noir from sort of outside the noir period, but it's, I guess, one of those films where enough of the sort of style is a holdover for a sort of crime thriller that it could technically still be considered noirish. I mean, the back cover even in the blurb uses noir as a descriptive term, but it just looked super interesting. The price is very cheap, and of course it also features Agnes Moorehead, and I will watch anything she ever did, so was another perfect, very inexpensive Warner Archive title, so of course I was going to grab it. Now, these last couple ones I was really happy to find because I've wanted to get these for a while. This first one is 1965's The Liquidator, which is one of the many spy knockoffs and spoofs that were produced in the wake of the craze surrounding the success of the James Bond films, particularly after Goldfinger took the world by storm and started what is known now as the sort of 60s spy craze. This is one of the more obscure films that I've only seen once, but it was a very long time ago. As with most of the spy craze films, there are tons of Bond connections and references, so for any Bond fanatics like myself, that adds a whole other dimension of fun and interest to watching these. This film even features Jill St. John, long before she would be Tiffany Case in 1971's Diamonds Are Forever. But this, like most of the Spike Race films, has not had a lot of video releases, so Warner Archive has done a couple of these, which are among the more, not necessarily big budget, but they at least had the support of a studio behind them, and they had a big cast, and they were in color. But the real draw to this is this was actually one of the films directed by legendary cinematographer Jack Cardiff, and I think all the films he directed are a sort of very select, interesting group of films. They're sort of all over the place in terms of story and genre and production and the sort of headaches of how they were made. But I just think they're interesting to look at from that perspective as well. So this is a title I've wanted to get for a while. And of course, if that wasn't enough, this is actually in widescreen, so you get to see the scope ratio finally. I believe when I saw this, it was an old pan and scan version, because I know I saw it on cable at some point, and it was pan and scan and looked terrible. And of course, seeing films like this, pan and scan, you lose out on like 90% of the sort of 60s spy craze opulence that they were going for. And of course, this also is starring the forever underrated great Rod Taylor, and it's wonderful seeing him in a full-on trying to do Bondisms type role, because he could really do that. And he, of course, is one of the names tossed around as sort of a alternate universe 60s Bond. And that's another reason why he started getting particular roles around this time period. So it's interesting to see him here, where it's a direct role trying to be a Bond knockoff in that sort of sense. So that's just another of the fascinating films of the spy craze on DVD from Warner Archive. What I think is probably the most fascinating one is 1965. Again, 65, really the peak year of the spy craze, with Thunderball coming out. But that's Where the Spies Are, which is starring David Niven, and was directed and co-written by Val Guest, who both would re-team later on their segments of the ill-fated but film I adore 1967 Casino Royale, and they would be the ones to do all the patching segments to even try and glue the different crazy pieces of that film together. So that work they were doing is really prefaced here. So if you love Casino Royale like I do, and really you should, because it's indescribably amazing in its silliness. You'll see a lot of that spirit here, but of course much more coherent, because this was made by intelligent people and didn't blow crazy amounts of money, and David Niven is always magical on screen. Here he's sort of playing a fish out of water character drawn into sort of the spy realm, but it's a really interesting film that, again, I've only seen before in a really crappy pan and scan version, so getting it in widescreen is a real treat, and this is another uncommon Warner Archive title, so seeing this and it being one of the big spy craze titles I always wanted to get a physical copy of, I was really excited to be able to do all these in one fell swoop. There are no extras, but again, it's widescreen. The other interesting thing is this film was written by both Wolf Mankiewicz and Val Guest. So Mankiewicz was one of the key people in the early days of the Bond films. He was actually a co-writer on Dr. No, but wanted his name taken off because he thought, oh, I'm embarrassed to have my name on this. This isn't going to go anywhere. It's not highfalutin enough. And of course, then later came to regret that decision. So it's interesting seeing what he brings to the table here a couple years later, once the spy craze had really taken off. So I think this film is fascinating for a number of reasons. It also co-stars the wonderful and incredibly beautiful Françoise Dorlac. Probably mispronouncing that like crazy, I apologize, who was, of course, the sister of Catherine Deneuve and appeared in the incredible, hypnotic $1 Billion Brain, the third and final of the Harry Palmer films. But unfortunately, she had a very untimely death, so you don't have a whole lot in terms of her filmography. So the few films she popped up in like this are really interesting, and of course have that sort of sad quality to them, because she is great in them, and she is, of course, absolutely beautiful and photographs amazingly well. So seeing her here and in $1 Billion Brain is a really sort of bittersweet experience, knowing what happened and in her actual personal life, which was tragic. But it's wonderful having this film finally in a widescreen transfer. So I'm looking forward to seeing it on the Warner Archive disc. This is another film I've wanted to get for a while. Warner Archive has done really, I think, the best version to date, and that is Avalanche Express. Express, which is unfortunately doesn't have the greatest reputation in the world. It sort of blends a little bit of the sort of disaster film genre that had died out with more of a spy thriller. But this was actually Robert Shaw's final picture and also director Mark Robeson's final film. So it is important for those reasons, and not to keep harping on in a sort of morbid way, but I'm, of course, a great fan of both. And so this has always been a film I wanted to get a good copy of because, again, I've seen it before, but it's been a long time, and the version I saw was really terrible. So, again, getting this film complete and in widescreen is a bit of a win, even if it's just a standard archive MOD disc. It doesn't have the greatest reputation in the world, but I do think there are some good performances and great elements in here due to Robert Shaw and Lee Marvin and Mark Robeson. So I'm looking forward to seeing it again and actually finally seeing it in widescreen. Now, if those were surprises, I have the final two from this stack of the other store that were total shocks. This one is still a Warner Archive disc, but unfortunately it's one that has gone out of print almost immediately, and it goes for quite high dollar marks on the used market. So this one I splurged a little bit on, but the store had it priced actually at quite a low price considering what it goes for, but with the sort of, the 45% essentially half off, that made it, I was not going to leave it sitting there. This is one of the masterpieces of the 1950s. It is one of the great Robert Mitchum performances. It's one of Nicholas Ray's masterpieces, and it is criminally unknown. That is 1952's The Lusty Men. Don't let the title fool you. That was really foisted upon it by Howard Hughes after his, since he had taken over RKO. But this is an incredible film. It really is, I think, the best of the sort of, I guess, mini genre of modern westerns set around the sort of rodeo circuit. Junior Bonner is another of the great films of this sort of ilk. But I think that film and all the others like it sort of follow in the wake of this film, which it's one of those films I just tell people to go and see. It is an unbelievably powerful film, and without even looking at the credits that Nicholas Ray made this picture, because all the characters are fully three-dimensional and truly suffer in all the great ways that Nicholas Ray characters suffer in films. So you can tell without seeing the credits that this is the same director of In a Lonely Place. The lead trio of performances of Mitchum and Susan Hayward and Arthur Kennedy are absolutely incredible, and the way that the story plays with the sort of love triangle that develops in a very natural way. It's never overstated. And again, Mitchum is literally the definition of iconic in this film and seems to carry the weight of the literal world on his shoulders. I have been extremely lucky to see the Film Foundation restored print of this at a Mitchum retrospective, and it was absolutely incredible. So it's a shame that this film has such a terrible video release history. Your only options are the rare TCM airings of this standard def master, tracking down this Warner Archive DVD, which goes usually for at least about $100 on the used market, or getting the Laserdisc. So I have the Laserdisc from the RKO collection. It seems pretty much what you get on here, but in 420i. That'll still cost you about $20 or so, and you have to have a working Laserdisc player, or you have to track down this DVD, which unfortunately doesn't have any extras. But this is a title. It's rumored that Criterion picked up the rights, and that may be why this went out of print, but it's been years now. Criterion does have a habit of doing that, which is really annoying. So I truly hope this film gets a new scan and a Blu-ray soon, because the Film Foundation print is absolutely beautiful. It's not like a full modern scan and restoration, because it does have some dirt and wear here and there, because it was more of like a preservation print that I saw. But this is one of the great films. It is a masterpiece. It's a film that everybody who ever sees it says that, but it's a very rare and obscure title, and its home video history has not helped that. But I could not believe they had the Warner Archive disc not only at a relatively cheap price, but then included in the half-off sale. So I only paid about $14 for this, so that was the find of the whole sale, really. This has been my number one most wanted Warner Archive DVD for a good number of years now. So if you ever see this anywhere, just grab it, because it's out of print, and unfortunately that doesn't look like it's going to change anytime soon. But this is a film that deserves Blu-ray and UHD and a full restoration, everything. I do think it is one of the great films. It is one of the best films Nicholas Ray ever directed, and it's one of Robert Mitchum's best performances ever in his entire career. It's a masterpiece that must be seen and discussed. So if you take anything away from this video, please see The Lusty Man. It is a masterpiece. The other surprise, something I can't even play, but it was in mint shape. It was about $2, and I knew I would never see another one of these again. So randomly in their VHS section, they had just sitting on the top shelf like some boxes and things that didn't fit. And lo and behold, I see this, which is the UK PAL clamshell from Warner Home Video of Diamonds Are Forever in the design they did for the Bond films at this time in the early to mid 80s. No clue how this got there, because of course you need a PAL VCR to even be able to play these. So I have no idea how this got there. It is in absolutely perfect condition. It is the original clamshell. It even has the Warner Home Video seal still on the side. And of course you open it. It's a nice black clamshell, but it's the official Warner one with the actual logo printed in there. And then the tape is in the little shelf. So and the actual tray literally holds the tape perfectly. This is the most perfectly designed VHS clamshell case I have ever seen. So that's why I think it survived all this time perfectly. But this was just sitting there. I couldn't believe it. So I'm a Bond fanatic, so of course it was marked down to $2. It had my name on it. There was no way. So this was just crazy. So yeah, this is the 1986 tape, and it is credited as being printed in Australia. So I'm thinking this is actually maybe an Australian release instead of a UK release. I thought it was a UK release at first, but I haven't. I need to look up the catalog number, because I've never really gone into all the PAL variants of the Bond films. Like I have a sort of general idea, but I didn't ever think I had to bother with them because they were PAL, and I don't really go into PAL releases, especially not PAL VHS, because I don't have a PAL VCR or anything. So, but yeah, it's just I don't know how this got there, but I was just like, well, now I have a nice Bond's PAL VHS display piece, because I don't have enough Bond display pieces. But I hope I don't have to collect all of these now. So, yeah, I just couldn't believe this was sitting there. So yeah, I couldn't resist. So that does it for the movies I found at our local records comic store big warehouse anniversary sale. It's always interesting what you find when they do one of these big sales, particularly when they open the back and just have everybody digging through old crates and boxes. And I'm usually the guy going through the DVDs and the movies and things, while most people are crate digging all the records and things. They have all kinds of odds and ends from all these past decades of being in business, but it's really interesting what pops up, and especially what stacks on all the discounts they were running this time. So I definitely got more than I intended to, but especially with a lot of these being free, or $1 or less than 50 cents, then that definitely makes my wallet happy. Not necessarily my lack of space happy, but so I know I'm not going to find these things again for this cheap, especially since most of these were free. So it always helps and pays to go support your local store, help keep them in business, and you never know what physical media goodies you're going to find. So I hope this has been helpful and at least somewhat fun and informative to hear me babble on once again about classic films and physical media releases. Do definitely go support your local record store, comic store, video store, whatever you've got near you. Please go and support them as much as possible to help keep them in business, because they need all the local support they can get. And as always, thank you ever so much for watching.